May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio mini podcast. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limits of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. Okay, so today's podcast, I'm going to read to you from Judyth Weaver's Brief Memories of Shunryu Suzuki. She says, I came to Zen Center in September of 1968. I'd been in Japan for 2.5 years, the latter half in Shofukuji, studying with Yamada Mumon Roshi in Kobe. I left Japan to go on a pilgrimage with Yamada throughout Southeast Asia, and then I went to India and then to Mexico to help start a Zen center in Mexico City with one of the monks from Shofukuji, Ejo Takada. Richard Crowley also had gone to Mexico with him to help. I wanted to come back to America to get married and have a family, so before I left Japan, I asked Yamada if I should go to the San Francisco Zen Center. An old friend had sent me their flyer for Tassajara, which was just getting going. I knew about Mira Roshi in New York, and I knew Ruth Fuller Sasaki, and had spent some time with her and went to her funeral in 1967 in Japan. When I left, I asked Yamada Roshi, what should I do? Should I go to the ZC in San Francisco? And he smiled and said, no, go find Miura in New York. I think it was because Miura was Rinzai. Well, of course it was. For many years, I had been going to Japan studying pottery and for various reasons. In 1965, I went there to study Buddhism and dance. The first year I was in Tokyo studying dance with the emperor of the kabuki dance world. Nihon Buyo is the Japanese classical dance, and the kabuki stars and geisha studied there with him. And then I saw no drama and started studying it too. And during that time, I was studying with Omori Sogen Roshi, the great kendo master. He had studied at Tenryuji with Yamada Mumon. He taught kendo and zazen. I sat with him for a year. I was getting ready to go to Ryutakuji to sit with Soen Nakagawa Roshi, and I went to say goodbye to Omori Sogen, and he said, why don't you visit my friend Yamada? So I said, okay. In Japan, a letter of introduction is better than air. I went to Shofukuji for a week in the summer of 1966, and then went back to Tokyo and quit all my classes, and went back to Shofukuji for 1.5 years. There had been 2 other foreign women there who hadn't worked out. One was a woman from Germany who had been there and had disrupted the entire monastery, wearing silks and diamonds and perfumes in the zendo. But she insisted, and she went back to Germany and wrote a book called The Master, the Monks, and Me, and made a fortune. And so they didn't want any more Caucasian women, and I learned years later from Ejo Takada that they'd been watching me very carefully, ready to kick me out if I made just one mistake. I got them to let me do takuhatsu, monks begging with them, by accusing them of discrimination. I've been sitting all the zazen and following the whole schedule with them. So Yamada said, okay, you can go begging, but keep your hat very low. You know, they wear a conical hat when they're doing takuhatsu. And so frequently, you can't even see their eyes a lot. I've done it. It's cool. I'd been friends in Kamakura with D.T. Suzuki and his beautiful secretary, Okamura Mikoko, and he died, and I'd even helped her in his library. But she was in London studying with the potter Bernard Leach, and I visited her on my way from India to Mexico, and I dropped by New York, and it smelled worse than even Calcutta. So I said, I'm not coming back here. I'm going to San Francisco when I leave Mexico. I went to the Zen Center office on Bush Street across from Sokoji, walked up the stairs, and met Yvonne Rand. John Steiner took me over to see Suzuki Roshi, and John and I sat on the steps and talked for an hour. It was his first day also. And then I went up to meet Suzuki Roshi and Okusan, and they were thrilled because I spoke a little bit of Japanese, and he loved the fact that I'd studied dance and tea ceremony, and my school was a moto senke, the same as Okusan. It's the smaller school of tea. It's a moto. That's the front door, like the front. Oto senke, the bigger school, is the back. So we mostly talked about Japan and Japanese culture. I had no burning questions. I'd been through the fire of koans. He was more like a benevolent uncle to me. Mumon Roshi was without question my spiritual father. It was nice to meet this very kind, very soft-spoken, easy Roshi without getting hit on the head with a stick, like in the Marine Corps of Zen Buddhism, as Rinzai is called. Yamada Mumon was definitely one of the generals of that. Our visits were always more social. We'd have tea and talk and giggle. He'd tell jokes. And he always asked me about my dance study. It wasn't like the serious Zen interviews that I was used to with Yamada and Sogen and Shibayama Roshi at Nanzenji. He died quite early on in 60-something. The master who hanged himself on the first day of Rohatsu Sesshin at Nanzenji was the next one, I think. Think about his students. Yeah, it's a very famous event that happened in the Zen world in Japan. At the first sesshin that I was at Sokoji, I was wearing my blue kimono and hakama and my rakusu. I was in the kitchen in the back washing dishes. In the monastery in Japan, I'd learned to take a cord and tie the sleeves of my robe back over my head so they wouldn't interfere with my work. You tie a figure 8 with the cord. Suzuki came by and snapped the cord gently and said, "That is Zen everyday mind." That's one of my biggest memories of him. It delighted him to see people do that and things like that. I think that being freshly out of Japan, I brought him a lot of memories. He was supposed to do my wedding ceremony. I married Ben Weaver, who was the manager of Esalen in Big Sur. But Suzuki was too ill. It was May of 1970, so we came up and Katagiri married us. I would talk to Suzuki a lot about Zen Center and my concerns about it. One day in the spring of 1967, a whole bunch of us walked from Bush Street to see the new building at Page Street with the Jewish stars on the wrought iron. I don't think it had been finally decided whether to buy it or not. Well, no. It was decided to buy it as soon as they saw it. That took place in 1969. So I was talking to Roshi, and I said that I was concerned about what would happen to his students there. I think I was the only one who was against it. I told him I was afraid that people would become too insulated. People wouldn't even have to go out on the street anymore. They'd get up, sit, do their thing, go back to sleep, and wouldn't be living in the world. People would get too dependent on Zen Center. He said that would be very terrible if that happened. And, of course, it happened. I was always considered an outsider by people at Zen Center, and I was. Listen, and, of course, it happened. Well, that's in her mind. I mean, it's much more, you just can't lump everybody together like that. Anyway, everybody has a different experience, and, people come and go. It's like going to school for a lot. There are some people that stay long term, but anyway, I think it's a great place. But it's always good to have people like Judyth who are, pointing out she saw as pitfalls. And yeah, so we don't want to discourage that. And listen, I'm pretty critical myself. We all are. We're not a group of we don't all have to smile and say nice things about it and be afraid to say anything critical. Not at all. Yamada Roshi will always be my teacher. He's still teaching me now. I would talk to Suzuki Roshi about many things rather than be involved as a student. I had trouble sitting Soto style. I'd never fallen asleep before in Japan, but when I started to sit in San Francisco, bam. And it wasn't the posture that we sat facing out in Japan. It was the vibes. At Shokufukuji, they did the Hanya Shingyo, the Heart Sutra, first thing in the morning in one breath. At Zen Center, it took 20 minutes. I thought I'd faint. The whole pace was so different. I have few memories that I can put words to. I'm not a word person. I have feelings. I remember going up the stairs and entering into his apartment and sitting there, and he'd always call Oksan in so we could talk together. It was very, very comfortable, almost like I was a little girl sitting in his lap. And every time when I left, he'd say, "Come again, come again." But I didn't go much because I didn't want to impose. I remember him sitting on the stage downstairs at Sokoji, giving lectures, and it felt so comfortable. But I don't remember what he said. That's good, Judyth. I got some more stuff from Judyth. I might follow up and read. Not about Zen Center. Not now. Later. This has been a Cuke Audio mini podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggett, Bandita Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.